This is the Page Publishing Book Club. How you doing? I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Is it the end of September? How did that happen? Summer went so fast. I hope you're enjoying your fall. D. Michael Smith, a disabled vet and retired custom home builder, won the Jack London Essay Contest in the 4th grade and was told what a good writer he is all of his life. But it wasn't until he broke his back that he got the message to write full-time. Beauty, a Star-Laced Photograph is the second book in his Tripping the Light Fantastic trilogy, and it's a true story.
Yes, it is. It's based on my life, my son's death, his murder, and my subsequent schizophrenic breakdown and my healing process.
I don't even know where to begin. That's just so tragic.
Tragic in a way, but I have pictures of my son on either side of my monitor. I hold him close in my heart all the time. You know, he's out there in the universe, and he sends me a message once in a while, so I'm open to that.
How old was he? What happened?
He was 25, and he was shot in the back of the head. The police never caught anyone or convicted anyone of the crime, but the cause of death was never listed. I think it was a death by misadventure, so they didn't have enough evidence to make it a murder charge, and the lady he was with knew the policeman. Actually, they were cousins of hers. So a lot of the evidence is gone. So anyway, the first book I actually wrote during my schizophrenic break. I laughed, I cried, I yelled, I screamed, and you should see my notebooks. They're wrinkled from all the tears I cried on them, but it was a difficult book to write, but it was very cathartic, and I healed myself by doing that. And I went to an intense suicide prevention program that the VA has for about a year and a half, and that really helped me a lot. Got on medication for my schizophrenia. I had my schizophrenia break in the first time in the service, and so that's how my service-connected disability came about. This book, Beauty, a Star-Laced Photograph, takes up where the first one left off. I was in love with a lady half my age, and of course, we know how those end up. It was a heartbreak. So it's about my healing from that, and then it starts on my healing process. And the third book, which I have finished, is about my healing process. The most important thing is that people with disabilities can still function in society. And I'm proof of that, and tells my life story from my younger days when I was homeless. My schizophrenia got real bad, and I went through a homeless period, but I'm better now. So there's probably about 50 different stories in the book. Life in the homeless shelter was very compelling. I was in the homeless shelter hallucinating, and I got pneumonia twice and almost died. It's about the people I met, and then about my relationship with Echo. It shows there's a piece there where I was sick with pneumonia, and I was walking down the street and collapsing, picking myself up. I missed my bus stop. I was lost in a blizzard, and it was quite an adventure getting back to the homeless shelter. I do shows. I'm a performer also, and I read some of my stuff that's very emotional. I've got standing ovations at every show, and so I'm assuming I come across well. Then I sign books, and that's how I've been getting the word out. I'm on social media. I have a website, dmichaelsmith.org, and I'm trying every way I can think of taking classes on marketing. You know, hard enough to write it, but then you have to market, and it's a full-time job.
So true, Michael. So true. Thank you. Dale McHaffey is a retired tax director in Vancouver, Washington. His writing skills landed him on his junior high school newspaper, and his job led him to write in professional magazines. Well, now he's back to creative writing, and his dad was the inspiration for his book, Whale's Tales.
Well, my dad was born on the East Coast and had salt water running through his veins. He loved the ocean and he loved sailing, and he was born in New York, and he sailed Long Island Sound. And his ancestors, it's my grandmother McAfee's great-great-grandfather that the story kind of was written about. And he used to tell me the tales that he had heard from his mother and his grandfathers. I did it to honor my dad because I always had an interest in the ocean and the animals that live there. And my undergraduate degree is in zoology.
So Whale's Tales, we kind of bounce back and forth between two
Yes.
very different time periods. Why?
My great-great-great-grandfather is the one in the 1850s. And I felt I needed to explain a little bit about what was going on at that time and why whaling was kind of the thing for young men that wanted adventure and excitement, and because that kind of segues into what we now have today, which is a much smaller whale population. Some are extinct, and we're in a crisis today with the whales and the oceans, and it's brought on a lot by global warming, but there's also resulted from the whaling and the lack of food. It starts with two friends in 2018, and they're students at Oregon State University, oceanography research program that works out of Newport, Oregon. And they're on one of the ships that are researching whales and tagging the whales to see how the migration patterns are, and swim up and down for food, and they breed down around Hawaii, and then they swim up to Alaska. But he's the one that has his great-great-great-grandfather's journal that was written during the 1850s. And when he goes to sleep after reading it, he gets thrown back like a time machine into the 1850s, and he's the sidekick of two friends back there, one of which is my ancestor. And so they get into all kinds of exciting adventures, and like on a regular whaling ship, and you understand a little more about the whaling business. And in between, when you flip back to the present, you get the information about what's going on currently with the whale. And so every other chapter is in a different century. I've talked to Oregon State's where I did my undergraduate, and they're supposed to run a piece in their alumni magazine about my book. And I got my master's at Portland State University, and they said they will run some. And I had something published in the Oregon State Bar magazine that speaks about this. And I'm more than willing to talk to anybody about it, to explain my motivation and my love for the animals and the oceans, and why we need to start doing things right now to change the way it is. It was fun writing it. I enjoyed it. Page Publishing is an organization that helped guide me through it, and get through the editing, and helping with the marketing and getting it out there so people will be able to buy it.
All right, Dale, thanks for the endorsement. Amber DeMoss is a chef in Iowa and recently rolled out her own food truck. She has a banana bread fritter everybody loves, and she's also cooked up a book that took her 10 years to finish. It's entitled Violet and Phoenix.
I never really considered myself a writer. I just kind of had thoughts and put them out onto paper and didn't really expect it to go anywhere. But
what made you decide to try?
In the beginning, it was just kind of a thing for me to get this book finished just for myself, to get everything out of my head. Finally, my husband convinced me to check out Page Publishing, and here we are.
Why a teenage witch?
Actually, it's kind of funny because she is a relation to myself. Certain things she does or says are actual real life experiences.
Okay.
I can't say that, I've dated vampires or anything like that, but...
And you're really a witch.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
I am Wiccan, so there is a little bit of spirituality in there for me as well. But yeah, I kind of took my own personal beliefs and some experiences throughout my life and just kind of incorporated into the book. Natasha Coleman. She's a young witch living with her mother, and her mother is also a witch. They kind of find out through her mom's own personal powers that her father, who is not a good character, is looking for Natasha to try and use her to make himself a profit. Natasha starts falling in love with multiple love interests, of course, high school, how that goes. She kind of grows up, has several tragedies happen as well, and it kind of almost forces her to go back to the real human world into hiding.
She goes to an island?
Yes. When her mom found out that her father's looking for her, she takes her back to this island that's in another dimension. It's almost a sanctuary for supernatural beings in exchange for living in peace.
And it's there that she finds out how powerful she is.
Correct. They would call her pyrokinetic, so she controls fire.
Oh.
Yeah. And the name of my book, Violet and Phoenix, Violet is a nickname of hers, and Phoenix is also a nickname because she has caught on fire in front of several people during the book.
Oh, geez.
Something really big, tragic happens. I'm not going to say what, but she ends up kind of being forced back into the human world, into hiding.
Oh, okay. So are you talking about this book?
Oh, yeah. There's a small town bookshop up here that I've been trying to promote and get a couple books out into their shop as well, because they kind of do magic, card games, lots of comic books, and so it works out really well for the genre.
All right, Amber, keep working that magic. Larry Jay Mckissack is a retired military man, and since 1973, he's written over 2,300 poems, some of which made it into his book entitled U-N-I. That's right, the letters U-N-I. It's all thanks to your granddaughter, right?
Whatever I can, I will read to my granddaughter. And one day my granddaughter said, "Papa, you wrote this?" I said, "No." And then I thought about it, and then I said, "Hold it." So I went and pulled out. I had all different kind of books, and I started reading to her, and I said, "These are mine." So I got tired of reading other people's work, so I started reading my own. And for this book, I told her, "You pick out whatever you like, and we'll make a book of it, so you'll have a book your granddaddy gave you."
Aww.
And I did it. I saw Page Publishing on the thing, and that was it. I never had any intention of writing a book. I just have them, and she picked out what she liked, and I said, "Okay, we'll try it."
She must be so proud of you.
Well, I have 5 grandkids. I hope all of them proud of me.
Is there a common theme? Can you tell me about your poems?
It's about anything and everything that I've seen or experienced. It's how I felt at the moment. I wrote them while I was in war. I wrote them when I was in hospitals. I wrote them on downtime. I've written them on the toilet.
Do you have any favorite ones?
All of them are favorites. I can't recite them all, but...
Do you have a short one you could read for me?
In the love of life, there can be no lies. In the silence of death, there can be no cries. In the creation of earth, there was no helping hand. In the destruction of Christ, there was no honest man. So for the love of you, I cannot stay, because tomorrow is another future day.
Nice. So you do little sayings as well.
Oh, yes, ma'am. I have a lot of those.
That's great. Do you read to anybody else besides your granddaughters and your grandchildren?
Yes, ma'am. And, okay, I suffer from PTSD. Okay. My main thing is crowds. I don't do crowds, and my patience ain't that long. I know it, so it's easy for me to work with. I don't do repetitious stuff. So if I'm having a conversation with somebody this week and they can't remember to want to have it again next week, it just don't fly with me. It's one of them. It's one of them PTSD things they say. So it is what it is, and I just let people know I'm directing to the point, and then we move on. Just keep it moving. I write so whoever read it can feel what I feel and paint the picture that I wrote. And I have more poems, poetry, prose, or one-liners, or however you want to put it there, but it's something that also, most of them is something to make you think, why would this be? That's all.
Very simple, very to the point, Larry.
That's the way I write, ma'am.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem.
And it's break time here on the Page Publishing Book Club, but we're coming right back, and so should you, right after these words.
Have you written a book and want to get it published? Then now's the time to call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099 and do it immediately. You see, they're looking for authors of all types of books, and unlike most publishers, Page Publishing will take the time to review most of the books submitted to them, and they'll even give you their feedback. And if they like what they read, Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, the Apple iTunes Store, and other outlets. They'll handle everything: copyright protection, printing, cover art, publicity, and editing. So if you've written a novel, a children's book, a cookbook, inspirational work, a book of poetry, or biography, and want to get it published, then you need to call Page Publishing and do it immediately. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. Your road to fame and fortune could very well start with this simple phone call. For your free author submission kit, call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099.
We're back on the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Lydia Renfield is a writer and stay-at-home mom with 2 kids, ages 6 and 3, in Western New Jersey. She's talking to me from her attic where she can find some peace and quiet. She started writing poetry as a kid, but when her oldest was born, she decided time to write a book that she wanted to read. A book about paranormal fiction entitled Slither of Darkness.
I just decided that, there were so many things in different books that either left questions or, I'm like, that concept is kind of cool, but what if it went in this direction? And I just started tossing around ideas in my head one day, and I'm like, And then I took some things that happened to me and really took artistic license with it. And, then there's the magical paranormal aspect to it. So that's where I got that from, and it kind of blew up, I guess you could say, into writing an actual book. It's about a girl named Kedzie. She's always been a little bit different, and this rogue fairy curses her because she wants to use her abilities, and she ends up almost killing someone who was supposed to be after the rogue fairy, and it goes all over the country in different places. Different incidents happen. The rogue fairy named Morel has this army of creatures that are moles and squirrels, and a lieutenant that's also a mouse like she is, and cat and mouse game, except the mouse is chasing the cat, and goes all over the country. She has her dog that's kind of a questionable character. I don't really want to give too much of that away, kind of thing, but there's elements of, a little bit of a love story in there. And due to the fact that I'm a mom, I grew up, reading YA, and it was, okay, well, it's really great that they fell in love, but what about the physical aspect? I'm like, okay, I kind of geared it more toward like an older base, but for those that enjoy the YA, but kind of want a little more juicy. I didn't want it to be all about the love story or the physical aspect. I wanted the story to be between the rogue fairy and Kedzie and her discovering who she really is.
Okay, yeah.
I'm trying to make it like a series, but that they stand alone. Right. Kind of be true to yourself, but don't be too sure of who you are from the jump. Leave room to grow, and that the person you think you are, you could be better than that. So don't let it stop you.
How do you promote your book? I mean, how are you telling people about it?
Well, I do use Facebook. I've actually been going to bookstores in the area, asking them if they would, put it on their shelves, if they'd be interested. I do have a business card that I leave with them that has phone number and email on it, that if they wanted to do something, and they give me their cards to contact whomever and whatnot, and they pass along the business card and whatnot. So it's kind of been a little slow trying to get that going, but due to the fact my husband worked rotating shifts, I've got 2 kids, it's not always easy to drag a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old to a store to talk to somebody and not do anything.
Yeah, every mom can relate to that, Lydia. Well, you know what? At least you're on your way. Thank you. Lonnie Burchett has worked in construction and factories, and she's been writing for 15 years. She self-published several children's books before she turned a page with a screenplay called Christmas in Woodstock.
Christmas in Woodstock is actually about a lady becomes widowed, has two teenage daughters, one's 16 and one's 18. The 18-year-old, she decides she wants to get into the sport of curling because it's not something that you hear of all the time. So her mother is asked by her grandmother to come back to Woodstock, Vermont, and help her with her grandmother owns a country inn. And so she decides to take her two daughters from Kentucky to this small rural town in Vermont. And there she gets on a curling team. And her sister, who's a really great singer, Sammy, she gets a solo in a program for the Christmas parade and the lighting of the tree. And some of the girls in school are very mad and jealous of her because she's this cute little country girl and everybody's paying attention to her because she's got this little accent and that sort of thing. And Maddie, the mother, she ends up finding a new love in her life. And her oldest daughter, Ashlyn, is kind of upset and don't really like the idea of her mother having another man in her life. So it focuses on bullying, cultural differences. I lived in New England for 20 years, and I fell in love with everything about New England, from the lighthouses, the covered bridges, the little towns. Everything about it was so beautiful. So I decided to write about a town in New England, and several towns were on my mind, but it was Woodstock that I decided to go with. I wrote a screenplay first. And after I did the screenplay, I sent my children's books into Page Publishing, and I decided, well, I'll just send the screenplay too. And so when I sent the screenplay in, they read it and they loved it. And they said they would like to see it transferred into a book. So I did, and they decided to publish it.
And I find it interesting that your character wants to do curling.
Well, I've always been fascinated with curling, so that's sort of me. And when I did the story, I thought, we have a lot of stories about ice skating. Right. So my idea was to bring something to television about curling. You never hear about curling because the Olympics is going to come around in another year. And why not do a story about curling? Because it's becoming very popular in the United States. I have customers who take my children's books up in New Hampshire, and a lot of those people are purchasing the book, and some libraries have purchased the book.
All right, Lonnie. Well, that's the way to do it. Thank you. Eric Davidson was making deliveries to restaurants in Lake Oswego, Oregon, when I caught up with him to talk about his book, Birthright, a book of short stories. He's been writing since 2008, and when he posted some of his stories on social media, the positive feedback inspired him to take the next step and get published.
I put them together, several short stories, and they're different characters, but they're all in one novel, and I put them together just from my imagination. One in particular was actually dealing with my stepson, and that's a baseball story.
Does every story have a different main character?
Yes.
And they're all completely different?
Yes. Different people going through different seasons in their lives and their willingness to stick through the tough situation. They weather through it, and this just the power of the human spirit.
Can you give me an example of one?
I guess I'll go with Jake.
Okay.
He had, in the Seattle area, actually Tacoma, and he wanted to play baseball. And so he had hired a pro trainer. He was going along nicely, but then he started dating a young lady, and she kind of pulled him away from training for baseball. And he got into a softball league, and then his abilities were starting to lessen. He lost interest pursuing after Major League Baseball. And then a little angel, an older man, pops into his life and encourages him to come back. And he does make the change, and it works out for him.
Is there a message in these stories?
Basically, the power of the human spirit, to never give up, to always have hope that God is watching over you and encouraging us along the way.
Are you doing any book signings?
It's pretty tough being a truck driver. I'm always on the road, but my hometown in Sandusky, Ohio, local newspaper there, they're wondering when I was gonna stop through there. But whenever I do, I'll let them know, then they'll set everything up. Because that was the first step that I made in getting exposure for my book. I called the local paper there, and they put an ad in the paper, and everybody started paying attention.
Where's home?
Sandusky, Ohio.
Oh, that's perfect. Start from where you know. That's what we always say. And for that matter, where people know you. It just makes sense. All right, that is a wrap for this edition of the Page Publishing Book Club. Thanks to our authors, and thank you for stopping by. If you missed anything or, just liked it so much, you want to hear it all over again, all you have to do is download the podcast at 710WOR.com. Till next time, I'm Alice Stockton Rossini.